Yeah, I see that we are already on origin and we released it. But yeah, I saw that we still have some blocker PR that we still need to merge. So yeah,
Yeah, so the idea after speaking with Yuri about our versioning is that we're going to start with development versioning. So do the 0.1. And these are not, production releases. We can still make breaking changes. So if we make a breaking change, it would go from 0.1 to 0.2. And then this would basically help us, first off, just kind of get it out the door. Secondly, it'll help us track breaking changes better. So like we're kind of doing it ad hoc right now, where you don't know when a breaking change is going to be made, because we're only using that like tag version, like the pre-alpha dot, and so that we're
mhm.
basically moving from pre-alpha dot to origin versioning. It's development versioning, and then we will continue to add and improve things into the future until we can safely call it a 1.0. Yeah,
Okay.
how does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll get started. So, when we last met, here, let me share my screen. All right. So, when we last met, we were working on restructuring Polyfest manifest file names and the schema build artifact. We said those are kind of the same thing. And we had our breakout session and we created some tasks for the development roadmap. But I don't know if those tasks actually complete out these two, or do we have additional work to do on those?
Yeah, I think that those tasks were just, yeah, that's a good question. So we definitely still need to restructure Polyrep manifest files.
Okay.
That's something that hasn't been done yet. Um, and then for schema build artifacts, we implemented an initial solution, and I think that we should probably still actually create a spec for it, and make sure we're not missing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so because this is like a really important topic, and I'm sure that we could come up with some things to improve there. So
Right.
yeah.
So we need to continue on with this. But is it critical still for the first release, or
We
is it?
basically implemented what we needed for the first release.
Okay.
Um, and I would still have it be critical because it's foundational,
Right.
and we just basically want to do like you know one last verification that everything looks good. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Does anyone else have opinions? It sounds like Yuri agrees.
So this was the
Nestor, Niraj.
pre-origin, right, from our last workshop, and then we created these tasks on the roadmap side of things, so outside of the scope of the technical council. And so what you're talking about is this post-origin stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think that that's probably an easy way to section it off. Yeah,
Okay. So we still need to
yeah, and
do post-origin.
yeah, yeah, and I was curious if Yuri and Nestor and Niraj had any thoughts on this.
Yeah, I also agree.
hmm Yeah, agree.
Okay. So I'll break this out into
What's
pre.
the other one? What's the restructuring polygraph manifest about?
This is the one where we basically talked about like solidifying the concept of project extensions and projects, and coming up with a more ergonomic YAML format for the Polywrap manifest.
Oh, project manifest.
Yeah.
Hmm. Is that critical?
In my opinion, I think it is. Because I really think that our current manifest structure is very confusing, and it's kind of the first thing that people see. And it's also the entry point for us working with projects. And so just like the schema build artifacts were the entry point for the client, this is the entry point for the CLI. Um, and I think we can definitely improve it pretty easily. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah,
It's a
okay,
bit less critical than, or a lot less than schema build artifacts, but it's still critical. Yeah, for sure.
okay.
Okay, so the pre-origin stuff I think we can consider done, and I'll create another one for the post-origin. Correct?
Okay, awesome. Yeah. I think that
Because I think
feels
we
better.
did the implementation planning and it's already in the roadmap, so I'll change that to ready for roadmap, and then I'll create one
Agreed.
for post-origin, and we can get it prioritized in here. I'm just gonna move that down for now. Okay, and then the restructuring polyfest, the polyrep manifest file names. We had this design here.
Yeah, and there's just some final tweaks I would like to make on this because I recently got a bit more clarity around
Okay,
this.
right?
I don't know. So yeah, it's just like very minor. Yeah. Let me. I'll go do that now. I'm just gonna copy it into the description.
Okay. And then what do we want to take on next? I mean, we still have the multi-client ecosystem support, which is critical, but we haven't really, done a lot with this yet. Let's see.
Yeah. So, do you have any thoughts on this, Nestor? If not, I could give an opinion.
Sure. If you have an opinion, like go ahead because I don't have any off the top of my head.
Okay. So basically, you know, I feel like with this issue that we have, we kind of got into the weeds talking about like, how we could implement this like testing framework, and I feel like we can like start a little bit simpler with it, because we have the Python client that's going to be making its way into the mono repo soon, and we can come up with just basically a better way of having our test cases stored in the repo, so that way we can easily determine what features a client supports and what features it doesn't. Um, and then, like we can improve upon it. But I feel like the first goal here should be just, having the ability to create a feature matrix for a specific client, um, even if it's just in the monorepo and even if it's not automated in any way.
Yeah, I agree with that. And additionally, I'd say um, that in addition to that, the only things that we should probably worry about in the very short term are pretty basic but practical things, like how to structure feature matrices, how to structure client releases, how to handle like feature parity at a documentation level, and things like that. Like very practical things, like at least in the short term.
So those are more
Because
standards, right, than features.
yeah, right, yeah. Because I think that the reason why we always like brush this issue but never like fully bite it is because it's too big
Okay.
and it entails like too many things.
So what do we need to bite off pre-origin? I guess is the question. Is there anything here?
Pre-origin? I don't think so. Do you think so, Jordan?
No, yeah, like basically we've kind of like we've kind of launched. Well, yeah, okay. The I'm confusing myself around like what we should call pre-origin. Um, so really quick, if I could just make a quick little 2 second rant. I think that pre-origin is kind of done. We have origin kind of like out the door in a, a in a way that allows developers to build on it. But what we're working on now is basically the production release of Origin.
Right.
So, like we're using the development versioning and we're trying to get to 1.0. But currently we're at 0.1. And so what does that mean? I think that we can start calling things maybe pre-production or pre-prod, maybe. Like they have to be done before we call it production ready, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so that's a quick little thought on how we should be calling these like different stages.
Right.
Um,
So
does
are any of
does
these
that make sense to you
needed?
guys?
Are any of these needed for production?
I'm not sure I would go with specifying that things are for production or pre-production. I mean, they have a priority, but maybe we should focus on around on strategic releases and not think of things in terms of production. Although we can still think in terms of production, just not think about the production release sort of, even though that's the goal.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the whole point of this whole like feature design process is that yeah, we're trying to carve out time for us to work on things that we think or we know are really important.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we spec it out, we can basically let the release planning, take over from there and say, okay, here's this fully spec feature.
Sure.
Let's slot it in to this release.
Okay.
Um, and so
So we're not really
with
release driven here. These features all need to be designed and where they fall into the roadmap. We'll design them based on these priorities, but then they're going to be in the roadmap slotted for features as they're available, slotted for
yeah,
releases.
yeah, and I think that the priority, will help with the prioritization of
Mm-hmm.
like the road mapping process, obviously.
Right.
Um, but yeah, we don't.
I think
Yeah.
so. So the way the feature started as part of the technical council, or just the way the technical council started, was because of features. Because there are certain features that are a bit too, difficult, a bit too over-encompassing for a single developer to, spec out and
Sure.
implement. So that's why we have the features. But yeah, I think that's the root cause, and yeah.
Okay. So what I'm trying to get to is, which ones are we going to work on next? Because we do have a couple workshops coming up. Um, I think the next workshops we're going to continue to use on standards, as we discussed last time. But we do have time today to have a workshop. So what do we want to focus on? Because these two, are too big. This one we're applying feedback, so that's very close. Do we want to review this one and finalize it today, or do we want to move on to one of these others?
We could try to finalize that one,
All right.
get it out of the way.
All right. So Jordan, you were applying some final feedback. So do you want to share your screen and walk us through it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me. I actually was just opening it up and messing with it, but let me stop messing with it and just give some, I guess, general feedback of what I think we should probably improve. So, I'm just gonna Control Z a bunch. Okay. So, um, with this design we have, so just to start from the beginning, the goal of restructuring the manifest is to make our current layout easier to understand. It's not clear which of these manifests are used for projects and which are used for extensions or customizations to the project. And so basically, to catch you up, we talked about kind of how we can have project manifests. So we can have like an interface project where it has a special project section. And this is where you specify the name and the type of wrapper. And then additionally, like plugin and application and for WebAssembly. And then we then basically got into talking about the package manifest. And so this is actually wrap.info. And then just to kind of fill this out really quick, where is the schema build artifacts? I'm just going to link to... sorry, I'm just trying to find the actual format. You know what? Here, I'll just link in the code. 1 second. Manifest, wrap, source, formats, wrap info. Okay, so we have version, type, name, API. Okay. And then for the project extensions, and here, let me just take out this picture. Okay. So we have the package manifest. And then the project extensions. So every project type, Wasm plugin app, has a set of supported extensions. Build, infra, meta, deploy, code gen. And so basically, thinking of different ways to add these to your project so you can have an extension section. And so here is my thoughts on this. I think that we should go with this bottom approach here. Yeah, I think that for the short term, we can go with this approach because it's kind of more straightforward, I think. And so basically having a section for extensions. And then of course up here you would have like schema. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, some of the feedback I have on this is that I think that having dot interface and dot plugin everywhere is not the greatest. So basically just remove, yeah, all these. Every project manifest should be named polywrap.yaml. So that's kind of the first piece of feedback. Any thoughts on that? And then the second piece of feedback is this toolchain version is a little weird. So, should it be called toolchain?
So can we first talk about why do we need toolchain version, just so that it's more obvious?
Yeah. So basically, toolchain helps you determine what CLI or what version of like the CLI you can use. And so it's basically similar to having like a .mvmrc, where it says like v16 or something. Or having like engines in your package.json.
Should it then be just the version of the Polywrap CLI, not the standard included, at
Yeah,
least for
yeah,
now?
yep. I was thinking the same thing. So this would be like 1.0.0, and then you could even do like the something like that if you wanted to have the origin stuff added or something. I don't know. And also so this is the CLI version. And also maybe in the future, if we have a CLI that supports targeting different wrap standards, maybe you could do target and you could do like, you know,
Yeah, something like that. Should we name it toolchain or Polywrap or Polywrap CLI? Because you are using just the Polywrap CLI and specifically, not even the wrap CLI, but Polywrap CLI.
yeah, that's a good point.
Or should it be based on the manifest version like we had so far?
Based on the manifest version.
And do we not have a manifest version anymore?
Got it. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, so
Maybe trying to frame it from what are all of the problems that we're solving right now? What were the
right.
problems so far? And yeah,
Yep. Okay. So yeah, you bring up a good point. We could have like so currently we call it format, um, which we could move this as a top level key. And so this is like the manifest schema version for the polywrap manifest. And then we could have the project section, and inside of the project section you can specify a CLI version. And then in the future, so this is like a future thing we can add, is like a wrap version that you want to target.
so because it's not obvious to me, could we talk about why do we need to have a separate, or why do we want to have a separate version for the manifest from the CLI? Because like the most basic thing would be to have manifests because they're project manifests. There's something that specifically bound to the Polywrap CLI. They could just be part of the Polywrap CLI, and when you do a breaking change in the manifest, you can do a major bump in the version number of the CLI. So technically, you could just use the CLI version inside of the manifest, right?
Got
You can
it.
link those two together basically. So that would be like a basic step, and then maybe you have a need to separate those two. But to me, it's not obvious that we're there yet, or that there's even a need to separate.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Um, but I think that the problem then becomes, so here let's walk through a quick scenario. If we made a breaking change to the manifest, like let's say we removed schema. If we upgrade this to version 2 and we then tried to run it, it would basically break and it would say schema, is not correct. It needs to be like module, schema or something like that. So it without having the format version that you're using, you're unable to do the migrations that we currently have. Um,
Sure.
yeah.
Is there anything else? Just to write it all down, then we can tackle it one by one.
Yeah. So, no, that's kind of the only thing I can think of is just like handling migrations.
So then my question is, are automatic migrations a good thing? They were a good thing when we had the manifests downloaded by the client, because that's something that's useful for the client to be able to automatically, upgrade.
Mhm.
But for the CLI, now that we don't have, a client resolving manifests, it's a bit of an easier thing to do. So let's look at it like this. What would the process development experience look like? Like, let's say you have, version 1.00, you have the schema, and then what do you do? Do you, decide that you want to upgrade your project to the new CLI, or did you upgrade the CLI? Like, what did you do? Let's say, I guess we updated the CLI to version 2.0. So the CLI inside of this manifest would stay the same. So when you run it, when you try to build, it would say, hey, you're trying to build an old version. Technically, you could then, ask the CLI could ask the developer, hey, do you want us to upgrade your manifest? I'm just thinking out loud what the experience would look like before introducing, additional features.
Yeah. That is a good point.
And in that way, like, you give I'm not suggesting this, I'm just literally thinking out loud, but this is a way you would, give the user a bit more knowledge about what happened, and maybe he needs to upgrade something else. If schema was a built artifact, maybe he's now notified that there's no schema, so probably there's no build artifact. So if something else needs to change in his development flow or tools or whatever.
Yeah. It's a great point. And currently with our our project upgrade system, it's kind of bad because it allows people to just keep their old formats in their projects without having any information that it's actually being upgraded whenever it gets loaded, and so I kind of feel like the upgrade process should be okay. Here, how about this? Like we basically still use the CLI version. If you try running, so in the CLI maybe you could do like Polywrap.
So before thinking about
version.
a solution, let me just bring another thing up, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, like, let's say there's something you cannot upgrade. So, like a breaking change that you can't easily upgrade, the CLI can. So, the process, the developer experience would probably look like they try to build, they get a notification, hey, you're using the old version of the manifest, you need to upgrade it to this version, maybe a link to like the spec or schema for the manifest, so they could look at what changed and what do they need to update. That's like a manual process, but also something that's probably going to be used for non-upgradable, non-automatically upgradable migrations.
Okay.
Right? We don't lose that manual process in all cases. But is that manual process is also the base of all of this, I think.
Okay.
So I think that then the question is, do we want to, and how do we want to automate that manual upgrade process? But before that, we should first define how the manual process will even look like.
Yeah. Okay.
Right now, it's just a pain. You get an error, and then you need to ask in the Discord.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. All right. I agree with the insight that we need to have the upgrade process for package manifest or for project manifest be different than like the wrap package manifest. I completely agree with that. So, and it could all just be driven by this single version, just like you said. The CLI knows what versions of manifests it has inside of it. So this is like the project manifest version. This is like the extension, etc. And you know, based on that, it will, you know. So yeah, like when you run Polywrap build, let's say it's going to load manifest, check CLI version. Yeah. All right. So the weird thing with this then is that like when you figure out like what version this is going from. So when you check the CLI version, how do you know what format you're going from? You know, like I don't know.
How do you know how to find the CLI version?
Yeah. No. Find the format version. You basically need a mapping from CLI version to manifest versions, right?
I'm not following.
All right, yeah, that's fine. So I feel like we should just add this as additional feedback. So we need to refine versioning, semantics, where we can basically specify manifest format, a CLI version, which is basically like the compiler, I guess. And then also, like a wrap target or a wrap runtime target. Yeah. So these are like the three different types of versions we can think of, right?
And now that you mention it, something I thought about earlier today. So we might actually need the wrap runtime target maybe sooner rather than later, because that's something that's so the codegen that we have in wrappers, that's part of the wrap standard. That's something that needs to be in a certain way so that every client can know how to run a wrapper, which functions to call basically. So even though the CLI is Polywrap CLI, the compiler is actually a wrap compiler, or at least the codegen is the wrap codegen.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah. All right. So then, let's just add this to future things. And should we call it the wrap runtime, or like, yeah, what should we call it?
I don't think we should decide right now.
All right, cool. So yeah,
there's two things, right? There's the runtime is what technically happens in the client, and this happens in the wrapper, but it's kind of the runtime, so like a build target maybe, but yeah. Anyways.
Okay, got it. Yeah, build target. Okay. So yeah, I feel like we could do this, very easily. This renaming super easy. I also think like we need to decouple the WASM and interface project types within the code base. So currently they're together. Yeah. So they're
Hey guys, I don't wanna interrupt, but yeah. So the if Barcelona building is being closed right now because yeah. So we're moving to another place. So we're gonna have like a 15-minute blackout time. So we'll be right back.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, and enjoy the event.
Thank you.
Yeah, have fun.
So yeah, like and the other thing with versioning that I wanted to mention here is, you know, inside of the build artifact, or the package manifest, should we have a version for the ABI? So that you could basically reversion the ABI. Yeah, curious what you think.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Uh,
Probably, I'd say. Like,
Okay.
I don't think I have a solidified opinion on that, but it seems like we do need it.
Okay. And then I just want to bring up one last like kind of meta point. So here,
There should
versioning-
probably be a discussion around the ABI. There might be some
Yeah.
implications with that.
Definitely, yep. Yeah, and currently there's no problem with just having it coupled, so okay, and then the last point I wanted to make was that I was thinking about this recently. And for versions that represent an interface, we don't need a patch number. So, like, patch numbers represent a change in implementation. But, if we just have an interface, there is no implementation. And so we only have breaking changes or additions.
Wait. If I think about it, so what happens if you if you if you add an optional argument? Are you adding a feature? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah,
then yeah.
so basically for versions that represent an interface, we only need major and minor. Okay. So interface versions major minor. Okay. All right. Yeah. So we got more in the weeds than we probably should have. These are some hard questions that we should probably sit on and think for a little bit on. But yeah, this is kind of my general thoughts of like what needs to happen with the manifest refactors. Like these are the things that we need to basically figure out further. Yeah. Is there anything else that you guys would add or modify or any thoughts?
I'm not sure about the extensions, how to do those, or should we even do those, and should the build manifest be part of an extension or built in?
Yeah, that's a good question. Currently how we do it is we link all of the extensions to the root project manifest. And so, are you proposing that we just have project manifest and then, just separately a build manifest and you would pass it into the CLI?
I'm not proposing. I'm trying to first explore like what's even happening and what do I even think about what's happening. So, like we have the project manifest and we have the build manifest. What's the point of the project manifest? Kind of like to tie everything together.
Yeah, it's basically to tie everything together, tell you what type of project it is, and then also give you all of the pointers to the implementation, I guess.
Which
Yeah.
could be considered a part of the build information.
Yep, that's a great point. Yep.
Like it almost seems like the build manifest could be, at least in its origin form, part of the project manifest, and there could be a reason to separate it out. But other than it being kind of bulky, I don't see a reason, at least right now.
Okay. One other way to think about it is that I think that
Can you open a build manifest just so we have it?
yeah. So here's like an example. You can also specify Docker configuration options here. So if we go over to this one here, this is like a more full one. And you can also name like the Docker image and stuff like that. Yeah, so it is kind of like its own stuff.
Yeah. And technically, you could specify the module here, I guess. But...
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of feel like the schema and module part is like a little weird. I feel like we need to create a section for this. So it's like we have project, extensions, and then maybe here we have like source or something like that. Something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Do we even need? Do we need a reason to link to the build manifest from the project manifest?
Yeah, so one of the reasons I just thought of was that when you run the build, it requires a project, right? So it requires to know what the project name is, what the source files are. So basically, it's a you basically give the build command this root manifest, and you say, hey, here's my project. Go ahead and run a build. And so the build command will basically say, okay, let me get the build extension. If there's multiple, like which one did you define? And then it's going to load the build extension, and then it's going to run the build with your source files. Similarly, with the CodeGen, let's say that you had a CodeGen extension. It's going to, load the root manifest. It's going to load the CodeGen extension, and then it's going to grab your source files, particularly your schema. And it's going to run CodeGen for your schema. Yeah.
So could you go to the once more to the build manifest just for a second? So we have so what could be technically auto-filled here? I guess format could be maybe inferred from the project manifest. Docker could be maybe auto-filled. Node version would not be. Include might even be.
So to see which ones are optional, if we just go to the manifest polywrap, to the build formats. So we can see here that Docker is optional, config is optional, linked package is optional. So everything is optional.
I almost feel like it could just be, so we could have it like this. So we could have a project manifest with a build property. It's optional because it seems like everything is optional in the build manifest. Mm-hmm. So the build property is optional. It's a root property. And you could either specify the properties of the build manifest directly there or reference a local file.
Yep, I agree with that.
Because if you just want to change like a node version number, you're not going to create a separate file for that.
Yeah. So that's how we currently do it. So inside of like, let's say, Polywrap, we have this like build, meta, deploy. So we have them as root properties. And I was just thinking it would be better to nest them underneath extensions. And we can ignore this, debug and prod or whatever. Just think of one, just a very simple case. And so the benefit of nesting them under extensions is that we now allow people to potentially write their own extensions. So it's kind of easier to be extended, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, then the question is, I agree we could have or should have extensions in the future, but I think the question is, should build be part of the extension?
Got it. Yeah, so I think so. Um, yeah, yeah.
What would be a good way of framing this? So, like, you technically infer all of the build properties by default, and technically the build manifest is part of the project manifest. I mean, the project manifest technically is the build manifest. You need even its properties to be able to build the project. It's not even too clear to me that build should have a separate format, the version number. At least
Oh,
not
okay.
too obvious. Like,
Yeah, so
it might, but not too obvious.
the reason for that is that whenever you change build, you don't want to rev like the root version. So it's actually been really nice to have the format versions of the manifest separate.
Really, it's been a bit confusing to me because I always need to check what the even version exists because at one point they went out of sync. So this was on version 3, this is on version 6, and I'm not sure what
Yeah.
happened. And
Maybe a way to solve that is to make the format optional. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that?
so let's first discuss, like, what's the benefit? What benefits did you find? Like, what
Yeah,
problem did it solve?
so if we add like a new property to the build manifest, we don't have to rev the version of the root manifest or any other manifest for that matter. Yeah.
Is
And
that a good thing?
yeah, because when you load these manifests, like you may have to do an upgrade. And so yeah, like it basically helps projects remain runnable for longer without having to upgrade themselves.
I mean, you do have to upgrade the build manifest, right? Or are you talking about if it's assumed, maybe then?
Yeah, there's a migration process that's run. Okay. Well, yeah. Let's just back out for a sec. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, we it seems like we want to lump source files under something because we like in my opinion they are kind of awkward at the root here. So I would propose that we add the feedback. You know, move. And then also, questionable whether we want the extensions property could leave everything at the like we have today. Okay. The versioning stuff, but we just kind of leave the manifest versioning as it is right now, and we can talk about that as like a completely separate thing. Yeah, I feel like in order to make progress, we should try to just like limit the scope of what we're doing. And so, yeah, I feel like this is good. Um, we basically talk about, yeah. So here, let me just order this maybe. Okay. Yeah, so these two are definitely the top two priorities. Yeah, this is an easy one.
Could a plugin and an app be in the same project?
No, they would have different types. So a plugin would have a plugin type, and then an app would have a app type.
No, but could you have both of those? Could a single JavaScript package be an app and a plugin?
No. Like, yeah, no. If you want, like, all an app is it allows you to import types in CodeGen. And so if you want to do that in a plugin, you do that in your plugin schema. So
No, I mean just like you could have different exported classes, you could technically export maybe multiple plugins from a single JavaScript package. Someone might want that, or even
okay.
have like let's say you're building a JavaScript SDK, you might want to also bundle a plugin in there. I'm just trying to see, is it technically possible that someone might want to, could there be a conflict if we don't have a dot plugin or dot app?
Oh, yeah. So the build artifacts for a plugin. No, yeah, like the build artifacts for a plugin are yeah, it's a bit hard to explain, but basically no, you can name the Polywrap manifest whatever you want. So you could have Polywrap 1 and Polywrap 2.yaml, and then when you build them, you could build them to separate folders, um, and then the output would just have the wrap.info file for the plugin. So you would basically publish a package with multiple wrap.info files in different folders, and that would represent each folder would be a different plugin.
Technically, that's how it is currently, but the plugin is a super simple JavaScript class. One could easily, even in test specify inline plugins. So there's not a
Yeah, for
concept
sure.
of a plugin is or should be this, right? Yeah, I'm just not sure of not having that app or that plugin inside of a manifest name. Like it seems like an app
Okay.
could have plugin or multiple plugins.
Okay, so you're basically saying that this is a good idea. Okay.
Maybe I'm just saying it's not obvious to me.
All right, sounds good. All right. Okay, so I feel like we've gathered some good feedback. There's definitely more arduous debate to be had. Um, and yeah, I think this was really good. And sorry if I didn't feel enthusiastic today. I'm still just feeling a little groggy, so.
Sorry if I'm pushing back on a lot of things, but
No, it's good. Yeah, it's all good feedback. Okay, sweet. All right. Yeah, was
All right, great.
was this what we were looking for, Joe?
Yeah, I do think this is what we were looking for. Do we want to have a continued workshop session on this?
Yeah, I think that this is kind of next on the list.
Okay. Well, I think
Yeah.
Friday's workshop is on invocation standards. So the next one I'll set up for the uh, multi-client ecosystem support when we're ready to have one here for features.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, great. So just a reminder, the Friday session is invocation standards, so please join if you're available. Otherwise, everybody have a great rest of your day.
you too.
All right.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.